So I think the next thing I'd like to implement is a stroke. Something I'm definitely used to using in my other graphics creation applications and environments like processing or Illustrator. I want to be able to add a stroke and a fill on these shapes. My strokes can be a pretty simple stroke. I'm just going to calculate the shape and make it a little bigger, and then make it a little smaller, and then subtract the smaller one from the bigger one. So I'm going to come in here and take a look at my ellipse function. Let's start with the ellipse function and let's get it working there, and then we'll implement it on rectangle. Now you might notice that there's a little bit of overlap between these two. I don't know, maybe it makes more sense later to have a general shape function and then I pass it a type since there's some overlap, but we'll get there when we get there. So the first thing I'm going to do is refactor code a little bit, and I'm just gonna rearrange some stuff. I'm going to be building to this color variable here, so I'm going to be adding to it when I create a stroke. So I'm going to separate the kind of like the fill and the stroke operations separately and then add them both to a color vector that I'm going to accumulate. So I think right away I'm going to make a new vec3 variable and call it color, and I'm just going to fill it with black. And then down here, instead of declaring color, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just have color. Let's rename this to let's see, that's circle thresh. Let's call this step vec3 step circle step, maybe step circle. One more thing I notice is I'm using I'm using some pretty bad variable names here. One's called distance, which is actually reserved. You can see with the text syntax highlighting that it's changing automatically to the distance, so actually I want to change that to dist. I also, maybe these should be kind of the same, right? So this is called circle thresh. But down here I'm using for my formula for generating the shape, I'm just calling it rect, and I actually think that's maybe going to be a little bit easier to understand in my code. So I'm going to change that to float circle is just equal to the step right there. Ooh, and I can see that actually that's a little different there from my rectangle to my ellipse as well. I'm calling step rect after I did the step threshold, and then I've got a distance. This is because this is a two-step process, right? This is calculating the distance and then it's returning a float. But right up here I'm just calculating a float. So really I don't even need this thing to be called distance. That should be what's called circle. And then this should be called I've got down here step rect. And actually, I think this makes sense for that to be circle step, and this to be rect step. So just some little stuff. I'm just trying to make sure these things are using like kind of the same terms basically, so that I don't get confused as I go from one to the other. I'm trying to make them as similar as possible. Obviously, they have different formula for generating the shapes. Okay, so there we go. I think my code's a little cleaner, a little easier to read and understand now. The next thing I'm going to do is, let's see. Okay. I noticed here with my rect step, I've got a step here of 0 with rect, and I have my size and my distance here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that circle, I need to replace that here. So that comes in there, and then that should be this size right there. Great. So circle comes into here for the first part of step, size comes in and floats in as a variable right there for the second part. Okay, so I think this is all working. Let's see, let's get rid of color multiplied equal fill color. Instead, what I'm going to do is color plus. Since I've got color up there, I'm just going to add in fill color. That way I can keep accumulating to this vec3 the same way I do down below. So color plus equals my fill, and then I'm going to take that fill, I'm going to take that right there, step circle, and I'm going to multiply it by the fill color. So this is a more flexible way to work. Rather than just like assigning the fill color to one color variable, I can like kind of build this up in pieces, right? Like first I generate the shape, and then I'm going to multiply that by the color, so that it fills, and then I'm going to add that into the color variable. And the reason I'm doing that is because then I can say, color plus equals, what would probably be next would be like the stroke, and then color plus equal whatever I want. That way I'm kind of accumulating here. Okay, so first I'm just going to go ahead and save this and make sure that all of this actually works. I've got this thing still called circle thresh, which should just be circle step. Okay, and now the 1.0 minus, I'm actually getting the inverse of now that I reverse that. And that kind of fixed that problem of getting the reverse rather than subtracting 1. I've actually just switched the operations here. So yeah, so there we go. So I think this is actually a lot cleaner. So circle step is equal to the step of the circle by the size, and then I'm casting that here to a vec3. And I also observe that since this is just a float, this could just be a float value multiplied by this here. I think maybe I don't even need that line. Undeclared circle, and then of course this is right there. Let's replace that out. There we go. Look at that. Much cleaner. We've got this whole thing down to like 4 lines now with just a little bit of rearranging. Okay, yeah. So a little bit of refactoring in here to make sure that the stuff actually is cleaner, easier to read, and kind of makes sense. So now we can go ahead and start working on adding in the stroke. So I think for the stroke, actually, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to grab this, and instead of a circle step, I'm going to put this down here, right underneath down here, and we're going to keep working on this. Color plus equal circle step times fill color, and then I'm going to call this circle step stroke. And all I want to do is just make a slightly larger circle, right? So I'm just going to add to my size a bit. And I'll just add maybe, I don't know, something kind of arbitrary there, 0.05. And just to test this, actually I'll make it a little bit bigger. Let's add 0.15. Just to test this, I'm going to do that. My expectation is that the circles are going to get a little bit bigger. Yeah, it's a little hard to test. But yeah, it does seem like that is expanding them out. Good, okay. And so because that's larger, what we actually, I'm going to go back here to circle step so I don't get super confused. Right, like that, circle step times fill color. What I'm going to do here is step. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to, I need a smaller one, right? I need a big one and I need a small one. I need a big circle. Yeah, basically what do I want? I want like a big circle. I want a small circle. I'm going to subtract 1 from the other. So I need to do this twice. So I'm going to need step, and I'm going to need step. And then I'm going to subtract by that value. And maybe these will just be plus 1 and 1. I'll replace this with a variable later. So yeah, all I need to do is like subtract the big one from the little one. There we go. And so now let's go ahead and let's test that. Cool, all right. So the big one, we've got the outer one, we've got the inner one, and we're subtracting. Great, it's working. Okay, so now rather than saying color plus equals circle step stroke, I can now do this as kind of a 2-step operation. A little bit of compositing here. Color plus equal, color plus equal. Great. Now they're both being multiplied by fill color, so for now, let's multiply it by white. There we go, that's working. And let's make this, as I change the size here of the circles, very good, I'm able to see these strokes there. Okay, so now it's pretty clear I'm going to need some more arguments here for this shape. So let's come in here and let's, inside size, let's add stroke size. Great, and instead of fill color, let's also add in, you guessed it, stroke color. Nice. And then down in here, let's replace that with that white. Let's multiply by stroke color. And it's giving me an error because I haven't passed it these things yet. And then that was this 0.01. This is just a number I made up. So let's make that be stroke size. Something I'm going to pass in. And then this is just, it kind of depends here, but I could say stroke size times 0.5 and times 0.5, like half the value. That way I could give it like a solid number, and then it's going to be half on that side and half on that side. I don't know. This is depending on if I really want to have control over this number. Great. Okay, so let's come in here then to ellipse, and I'm adding in position. I'm adding in size. I'm adding in fill. I need to add in a stroke fill, so vec3, and let's just add in maybe 50% gray for now for that stroke. And then let's go ahead and just so we don't get confused, vec3 stroke color is equal to vec3, right like that. So we'll add in just 50% gray, and let's replace that down there with stroke color. And then additionally, the order of the arguments here is going to matter, of course. So size, and then stroke size comes right after it. So after size, let's create a float for stroke size. And let's make that stroke size be 0.01. And then let's put that in after my size. All right, and let's check out what we got there. There we go, it's working. That's pretty cool. So as I change the size, and now, I see one more change that I'm kind of interested in here. I noticed that, like, if I make this thing 0.04, you notice I'm getting all that kind of overlap there, where like the fill and the stroke are adding together. So I think what I want to do is actually subtract. I don't want that overlap there. I want to subtract my fill down so it's on the inside of my stroke. So my new fill size would actually be circle step. I'm going to want to subtract this size. I'm going to subtract those. Yeah, like I want this inner. I want that to be my new inner fill, right? Right like that. And I'm reusing that, so I don't know, maybe I should put that on a variable. But there we go. So like that's going to cut in to my shape, that's going to cut out, and then subtract the difference to give me the stroke. And then that size, that cut in size, I'm using that also as the fill. So those are kind of being duplicated there. And I also notice I'm using this, I'm using this a few times. Maybe I should put it on a variable, but I think it's all right. Like this could just be, like obviously these are the same thing, right? So I can just say circle step. There we go. And I think that's a little clearer and easier to read and understand. Okay, so the last thing I think I'd like to do is make some user UI for this. I'm going to come up to my size, and let's go ahead and duplicate that. And let's call that stroke size. And I'll save it. And let's come to our fill color, and let's go ahead and let's duplicate that. And I think that's right. And let's call that stroke color. Great. Now you observe I've just been kind of duplicating these things manually here in the code, but also inside the ISF editor, there's actually some handy dandy stuff in here. Right in here is an editor. So there's a JSON editor actually inside here. And as you can see, I've been manually kind of putting just the name that I'd like the variable to be, but if I want to change the label so it's not ugly here in my interface, I can change that label, and it should add it automatically. See that right in there? That's kind of nice. Except it looks like it lost what I just did. I might have to maybe I have to create new in here for it to see. There we go, create new. Let me Command S save. Okay, so I guess because I was not using the JSON editor. But this is kind of cool. This is actually a relatively new thing in ISF. I want to make sure I show this guy to you because this is a way, instead of us having to come in here and constantly kind of type this stuff out, we can come in here and just manage our JSON this way. So what is this? This is the temporary input name. I actually want it as circle size. Oh, stroke size. There we go. Stroke size. And with a default value of 0.01, say. And with a min of 0. And a max of, I don't know, probably 1.0 for our stroke. Okay. And then down here, let's just patch that in right away. Stroke size is equal to stroke size. And notice I like to do this too. I like to do this camel case here for my code, and then if something's coming in as a user variable, I do the underscore. I don't know. That might be totally bad habit. And there we go. Look at that. I've got a nice controllable thing there, and probably that 1.0 size as an upper end is kind of large. So let's make that be 0.5 there for my max. We'll save. Nice. Okay. Cool. And then let's go ahead and let's add one more. Come here, create new. And let's change this. Isn't this cool, this little interface? Color. There we go. Label. Stroke. Stroke color. Stroke color. And we'll give it a default of, I don't know, whatever, light green for now. Let's give the fill color a default of pink. Cool, okay. All right. And then let's make sure that we wire up stroke color down here inside our code. Stroke color is equal to stroke color, which is giving me an error. Vec3 stroke color. Ah, okay, yeah, that's a vec4 .rgb. There we go. So color is returning a red, green, blue, and alpha. We're just generating an RGB because that's what we're passing in vec3. Okay, great. So let's come over here. Let's check this out. I'll hide all this so we can see our output window. I'll minimize that. All right, size, stroke size, stroke color. Now, something I want you to notice, if I want to stroke color black, I actually get nothing. And that's because I'm using all additive blend mode. I'm just adding to that color. So that seems like something after we go ahead and get stroke working on the rectangle, probably we're going to want to address next.